Hey, hi, it's me again. I'm late to the party as usual, but you know what? I figured it'd be better to talk about Invincible Season 2 later than never, even though it's only been a few days. I wanted to talk about it. I really want to talk about Invincible because this is one of the few times when something is like popping off and going crazy on the internet and everything like that. And it's actually deserved. I don't think by any means it's like the most fantastic series ever made by any stretch of the imagination, right? But all things considered, right? Like compared to the rest of the comic book stuff we've been getting with like Marvel and DC, which have been tragically boring and very generic and uninspired and uninteresting, and I could go on with the list, quite frankly. I haven't watched a Marvel movie since like 2021, I don't think. But kind of going on that same path, it's because this series, I think, just has this good sense of heart to it. And also, let me just say, the characters have depth. It's nice to have characters that have layers to them, as opposed to, I have one trait that defines my entire character. Let me flanderize myself to be palatable for 2 hours. You know, we actually build these things out because we have the time to spread it out and make it more palatable in terms of like an actual story and narrative. It feels nice. It feels so great to see Invincible, Mark Grayson, actually struggle with things and have to go through these mental barriers to overcome his shortcomings and everything like that. And I'll try to avoid spoilers, by the way, for the people that haven't seen it. There's a lot going on here that actually makes me interested in his character, whereas most protagonists I feel like I'm actively rooting against in these comic book movies because they just don't have anything to them. There's a lot with Mark Grayson that you want to grasp onto and actually just like feel for him. You feel for him. You feel for a character. It feels nice. Oh my God. And I think we were all kind of wondering like where this show could really go after what happened in season 1, because season 1 is crazy, right? With season 1, we have Omni-Man just destroying everything, laying waste to, I think it was Chicago, right? Just laying waste to Chicago. It's horrible. It's like the most like it's like the biggest atrocity I've seen in like any comic book thing ever. In terms of like not necessarily just like scale, but like the magnitude of it and its meaning. It feels like a lot. I've always been kind of wary of the evil Superman kind of thing going on, but this one plays into it very interesting, where we almost have like a reverse engineered Superman where he's, you know, he starts off good, but he's not really good. And then he does his evil thing and then he becomes slowly good because of what humanity has done to him. And there's this whole thing, right? Like there's this whole story about humanity. And I think that's what makes the series so strong too, is it really knows how to play into that humanitarian aspect. Actually, you can put yourselves into their shoes. Despite their superpowers, they're human too. They have that human side to them that they're struggling with, whether it be relationships or feelings of inadequacies. There's a lot going on there. There's depth, god damn it! And even the villains, right? There's a lot going on with the villains that even make you question their morality and their goals. Like hell, Angstrom Levi in this one is just like, you understand where he's coming from. You know why he's not a good guy. You get why he's doing it. You just don't agree with his methods. And I've said it several times in plenty of other videos, but like I love gray area villains where they have this want in mind, but because they're going about the wrong way, it leads to people being in the same level of suffering that they themselves were in the first place. They're the cause of the same thing that they had hurt them. It leads to a lot more dynamic in a story, and I love it for that. And this series by no means plays it safe. At any point in this series, you can feel like there's going to be some sort of big twist or some sort of big thing happening and you never know when to expect it. Like that mid-season finale is kind of crazy. Like I said, I won't get into spoilers, but like there's a lot going on in those like short 2 episodes where you're just like, what is happening right now? Speaking of which, I do have to talk about this, right? That whole mid-season thing kind of sucked. From what I understand, I could be wrong and I hope I'm wrong about this honestly, I think they had the season done and they just spread it out so that way they had more time to work on like season 3 and stuff, which great. I mean, I guess that means we don't have as long of a wait for the following season, but that also means that you had this awkward pause where I didn't know Invincible was back. I had no idea it was back for like 2 weeks until I went onto Prime and saw, oh, there are new episodes. So I'm not too sure it was the smartest thing to separate it that way, but all things considered, you know, it's still a great TV show. I think it was still worth the wait. I think I just wish that they would have maybe spaced it out entirely if they're gonna go that route, or just put it all together. Just have it all in one fell swoop as opposed to doing this weird shit. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. All right, I'm having a hard time not talking about spoilers. We're gonna do a little spoiler section. The fact that Mark now has a brother and is now adding to his mom's like pain and suffering because this is his dad's son. It's like there's so much going on here that I don't even know where to begin with this, right? Let's first start with the fact that there's just so much sadness and pain in this season, just like subtle pain. Let's talk about Debbie real quick because like this character in this season evolves so much in the simple fact that she now has the weight of the world on her hands and not many people know it. She is the wife of the man who is like this tyrant who killed millions of people, and she has that on her conscience every day. And it sucks even more because you come to realize that aside from that fact, she also just misses having a husband, and now you have to watch her try to combat this feeling of longing for her husband while also recognizing the fact that he is the person that ruined her life, and being constantly reminded of it with both Mark and also Thrax and Mark, Purple Baby. I don't know, I feel like there's a lot to her character in this season that really adds to this whole story and makes Mark's side of the story even more compelling, because now these two are suffering together and trying to come to terms with it all. And speaking of trying to come to terms with it all, Mark's story here is also especially very sad because he's the son of the person who very publicly murdered lots of people, and he was the one involved in a lot of it. Not directly, of course, indirectly, he was the one getting his face pummeled in, but like now, he is the one that has to constantly remind himself that he is not his dad when he loses control, when he starts fighting people a little too hard, when he starts just losing it. And at the same time, there's this looming threat in the back of his mind now, knowing that the Viltrumites are going to come over and subject the Earth to their whim. And even worse still, he is the one that has to bear the front of it. And Amber in this season, I think a lot of people in the last season weren't the biggest fan of Amber, but this season she has a little bit more bite to her. I think there's something going on here with the whole factor of them trying to be a relationship, trying to be a couple, and it just keeps on falling through because of constant needs to go out to space and be a superhero. So this constant like feeling of duty, but also a separation to recognize that he also has to be Mark Grayson, not just Invincible, which of course they ultimately separate because it was never going to work out this way. They just don't have the compatibility there, and it's sad. It really is. They're both trying to place the blame on themselves, and it's kind of sad seeing that, to recognize the fact that they both feel like they bear the responsibility of it. And this last episode is really interesting to me because last season's, right, was this crazy, big, huge, dramatic episode. This one's a lot more subdued. It's still crazy, right? But it's more subdued in the factor that the consequences are more mental than they are really just straight flat out. The fact that Mark loses control and flat out kills Angstrom Levi, kind of crazy. Because this whole thing, like I said before, of him combating himself and saying, I'm not this monster, I'm not my dad, and just letting loose on this guy that threatened his family, there's this worry now that he might just start losing it more and more. And what's sad is that everybody recognizes that like this is not his fault. Why was he put into this position? Like, this is so unfair. And it leads to something very interesting, because now I'm very excited to see where this next season of Invincible goes, because there's so many routes that they can take with it. I think that Invincible is doing a great job right now at really just controlling this narrative and making sure that it just feels right. All the depth is being built correctly. It's not feeling rushed. There's little bits and pieces throughout the story that really build to these things that help add to this feeling of purpose to the story. It's all really well done. Again, I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means, but if you haven't watched it, check it out. It's honestly a lot of great TV, and I really hope that this kind of stays the trend, because if I see like another boring ass Marvel movie, I'm gonna lose my mind, whereas this is where I want to see things go for the comic book series, especially like this and The Boys have a lot more dynamic and fun with it than I think most other comic book movies do. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching, and bye.